I'm going to be talking to you today about replacing the gasket on the door seals for a Backwood smoker. This one in particular is a party model, but what I'm about to tell you applies to virtually every one of the Backwood smokers. When you go to look on the internet, you're going to find there's not a whole lot of information. There's a lot of, I'll call it imitation seals, and you really don't know what you're going to get yourself into. What I'd encourage you to do is just call Backwoods directly and order your seal as I did here. And as you'll see, in about 3 or 4 days, you'll get a box, and in that box will be the brand new replacement seal. You do have to specify your exact model, and that will determine what it is you're getting. It does come as one big long attachment, which you would separate the shorter of the pieces, which is the lower door. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how to apply that into your smoker door. Also, make a request so they won't ship them to you unless you do for new screws. Given the fact that they do get dirty and rusty, it's better to take and put brand new screws in, and these will be stainless as well. So to get started, I would encourage you to clean your smoker. Like anybody, I would tell you not to use any harsh chemicals. I would use no chemicals at all. What I did is I took everything out of the smoker, and in fact what I did is I used just water and a light pressure washer to clean the screws around the door to knock off some of the stuff that had been caked down over serious cooking. That exposes the screws and gives you greater access. As you'll see on the seal, this unit here in particular is about 3 years old. It gets very, very dense and tight as it gets clogged with the various cooking and such, so it becomes very hard and rigid, versus the newer model is very soft and very cloth-like. So what you know is a seal issue when you're starting to get started is as you're cooking, you'll start seeing leakage generally around the door handle and at the bottom, even on the lower door. And sometimes we'll even start exposing and peeling your paint. But when you see that, you can adjust the door to tighten it up, but over time that isn't going to address it. And even those that are using a barbecue guru or something similar might notice they're getting high temperature alarms later at night as the fire gets going, and that's maybe potentially because it's absorbing more oxygen into the smoker and it's creating a hotter fire. So just something to be aware of. So I want to talk a little bit about how to replace these seals, and we're going to take that into section 2. So I discussed with you the materials that you order from Backwoods, namely the seals, and again, be specific on the model. I'm going to go ahead and detach these two. They keep them for inventory levels together because the upper and lower door are associated with each smoker. So I've just separated those. We talked about the screws, but the materials you needed, other than that, would be just a simple pair of scissors or a knife. And what I'm using is a driver head or a 1/4-inch socket. So as I start removing all the screws around the door, I don't have to take forever doing it. I'm just going to use it in a very automated way to remove those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to advance and remove every one of these screws around the upper door. Once I finish it, I will do the lower door as well. So I'll bring you back to the video here in a moment as I have this advanced. So as I discussed, I have removed all the screws, and the door is just balancing there at the moment. But what I wanted to encourage you to do is, before you remove the door and start tearing the seal off, is keep in mind the new seal you're going to be putting on, and recognize you're going to be joining them somewhere on your door. So what I would encourage you to do is find where that joint is today. And in my case, the joint, and I'll slide the door shield off now, it's in the bottom left corner. And interestingly enough, it's that way on both doors. Could be that way on yours, but regardless, match the environment that you have on your door, and that's where you're going to bring your seam together. Do not cut your seam short. That would compromise your seal. You can always trim it later. So in this case, what you've seen is I've got the door panel off, and you can get an idea of the insulation behind it and the inside. Now, as you can see, there's some debris and gook in there and a little bit of surface rust. I'll take a flat spackle knife and I'll scrape that clean and wipe it with a rag since I've got it there. And then when I go to remove it, recognizing what part is the bottom corner, you might want to put an X or a mark where your bottom corner is so you don't get turned around on it. But what you'll do is you'll then remove your door seal. And as you do it, looking from behind, you'll see how it applies on. As you zoom up here, you'll see that there's a flat side of that as well as the seal, which matches exactly to the new seal. So it gives you an idea of the orientation of how you want to apply the new seal. In this case, it's the same on each side. The flat part would be obviously here, and you'd seal it and get it in place, and you'd shoot the screws through at the end. So what I've done is just a preliminary laydown. So I took the panel after I cleaned it, and by scraping it, folks, you get a cleaner surface at the bottom. You could wire brush or sand. I don't know that that's necessary, but there was buildup, and that buildup could create a gap in your seam. All I've done is laid the panel inside down to get an idea for the orientation. I've marked an X here, so I know this is my bottom seal corner where the two pieces meet. So I'm going to overlap it down a little bit because I know I've got excess, as you can see here. And I'm going to create the orientation up into the corners. If you look at the old one, they did a 45-degree fold here in the corners. And I'll do that all the way around. This isn't my final, this is just giving me a perspective of where my corners will be. So I'm hanging it vertically. I already got an idea of how I'm going to be laying this thing out, and it'll be much easier. So you'll see I've placed the door in, and I just balanced it here initially on the thermostat back end. And then I laid the seal out. What was very important, as I mentioned to you earlier, is that you have the orientation to where your corner will be, and I left it deliberately a little bit long for overlap. That's where my initial seal was, at the X mark. So what I've done is I've placed it at the top, and I focused on the center screw. And then I worked my way out. I made sure I wasn't pulling it tight, but it wasn't a lot of play in there either. It was just stretched appropriately without putting any applied pressure or poundage on that stretch. And as I mentioned, I did 45s on the corner as the manufacturer had done. So making sure that that corner placement is right is perfect. You can under tuck it, which you don't want to do, or over tuck it. I would just say follow that seam where it bubbles out and apply it. And make sure it's not too loose, that it's just pulled straight as you apply it, and follow the screws all the way through the entire process. Once you've done that, you've clipped off your corner, you just proceed to your other door and complete your project. So just wrapping it up here, I've replaced the entire door seal for the main door. I'll move on to the next one later off of video. But as you can see, this is how it should look like. So as you put it in, pull it tight, don't stretch it, and apply it. And down here is where I joined my corner. Now those that have tightened their door handle over time as they were leaking, you might have to reduce that a little bit because the door will be a little obviously tighter now with the seal. So as an example, you can see my door wants to bounce. So I will shut it. I'll have to back off on my screw here to loosen the door a little bit because I tightened it over time. But this gives you an idea of the clean seal across the door and all the way through. And you'll repeat the process for the lower door. When I reached out to Backwoods, I think it was $40 for my party seal. Different seals, different smokers, so there could be a different price. And I think it was $53 with shipping. And I mentioned before I got it in 3 to 4 days. And that included the screws. I'm not here to quote their pricing. I'm just telling you what I paid. And I'll let them represent pricing moving forward. But it's a rather simple project. You can complete it in less than 20 minutes. This short video was brought to you by Phantom Smoke. Thank you for watching.